Hello and welcome to May's Crochet. I am Rachel and it is, well, I guess it's technically September now, so it's time to wrap up all the movies I watched in August. So if you don't know, if you haven't been, or if you just need a reminder, because it's only once every 3 to 4 weeks, I am making a granny square blanket out of all the movies I watch this year. Last year I did books, but it was a lot more complicated because I tried to make the granny square look like a replica of the book cover, so it was far more involved than what's going on this year. All I'm doing this year is making one granny square per movie I watch in a color depending on how I feel about it and whether or not it's a rewatch or not. 16 a month. 12 months for 192. I hope that's correct. And then I'm just going over everything once the month is complete. So here is an example of a month, and the yellow color is a 1. It means I don't ever really want to watch this again. And it could be for various reasons. It could be a genuinely terrible film. It could just be a really boring film. Or it could be, well, it was a fine film, but I don't really just want to. Like, there's no need to. It's not something that just appealed enough to me to ever see it again. Like, I saw it once, it was okay, I'm moving on with my life. Pink, solid pink square is a 2, which means it could go either way. I had a good time while I watched this, and yeah, I'd watch it again if the opportunity arose. If I never see it again, I'll keep on living, I'll be fine. And then blue is a 3. It means I absolutely have to see this again at some point soon. In fact, I would like to watch it again right now, but I can't because I have other things to do. So if you see a purple surrounding one of those colors, that's a rewatch. The solids are films I've never seen before, and the purples are rewatches. So 4x4 per month for a total of 16 should be a nice, big, cozy blanket to watch movies under in the future once I'm done. Of course, I can't tell you which movie's which at this point. Like, I can remember some of the solid blue ones, like the first time watches, because there's been very few of those. But unlike my book blanket, which, again, is close-ish replica of the book covers, so I can look at them and be like, oh yeah, it's that one right there. That's the book blanket over there, by the way. There's videos on it. Anyway, I don't know what these movies are. It's just a rating system, a very simplified rating system. Anyway, we are gonna move on. So I started a new format last month. The first half of the year was not super easy because I would talk about the movie while making the square for that movie, and I have trouble talking and crocheting, getting my thoughts together at the same time, so it was rough. It was rough to work on. It was rough to edit. It was rough to watch as well. It got to the point where a lot of the rewatches I would just make off camera and just do a brief mention of them while going through the video. So last month I decided to make the squares, not talk, and then do a voiceover of what I thought about every movie, including rewatches. And I think it went pretty well. It definitely makes it a lot shorter because some of these were getting kind of long. Some of these videos were dragging a bit, and that's no fun for anybody. So I'll be doing it again this month and probably just for the rest of the year because it's just easier. So with all of that out of the way, let's get to everything I watched in August. First up is the 2007 Across the Universe Beatles musical. Older daughter and I watched it while younger daughter was on a field trip with the marching band. And I think she really, really enjoyed it, even though we're not huge Beatles fans. A musical set to the songs of the Beatles, this is the love story of Jude and Lucy against the backdrop of the volatile 1960s. Again, I've never been a big Beatles fan, though I do like a lot of their hits. But the draw for me here was the director Julie Taymor, whose version of Titus Andronicus blew my tiny little sophomore mind during a college Shakespeare course. I love how she uses vibrant imagery to tell a dark story, and this is no different. Though the film attempts to address major issues of the time, like gay and civil rights and the Vietnam War, it's all still very surface level, leaning more on the love story and rich production. But that's fine, because I never went into this hoping for a history lesson, just a visually striking film with a great soundtrack, and that's exactly what I get every single time. So next up is pretty much a beloved Oscar darling classic at this point that I don't think I've ever watched all the way through, but I have now. I finally watched and remember Good Will Hunting. You know, that movie about the genius MIT janitor who's suddenly thrown into the spotlight after solving an extremely difficult math problem while mopping floors? Yeah, I'm almost positive I've never watched this movie all the way through until now. I know I've seen some highlights over the years, like How You Like Them Apples and It's Not Your Fault, but not the film in its entirety. However, it did come out in 1997 when I was busy being obsessed with Kate and Leo on a boat. Now that I've seen it, I can see why people loved it so much. It says a lot about higher education, intellect, and class consciousness that still resonate. Of course, it really shines brightest in the scenes between Robin Williams and Matt Damon. Williams spent so many years making people laugh that his quieter roles like this always felt out of nowhere, and though I already knew what was in store, I still appreciated every moment of him as Will's therapist. I'm glad that almost 3 decades of praise didn't lead to disappointment. But if I can have one nit to pick, it's that to this day, I just really hate the title. And no, I won't explain myself. And sticking with Matt Damon as a theme, I went ahead and rewatched The Martian. Coming right off watching baby Matt Damon do some math for fun, I wanted to rewatch older Matt Damon do some math for survival. It's not a Matt Damon obsession, I promise. I just really enjoy this film based off the debut novel from Andy Weir, and my enthusiasm for the upcoming Project Hail Mary adaptation is very much alive. After astronaut Mark Watney is accidentally stranded on Mars, he fights to survive, mainly trying to grow food, while everyone back on Earth scrambles to find a way to bring him home. For me, this is a truly fantastic character-driven film. The plot is great, but without a cast of such complex characters, it just wouldn't work. I really love this lone survivor story where the main guy doesn't lose his mind in his predicament, he keeps a level head and works each new problem as it comes, doing everything in his power to keep going. There are no miracles at play, no random happenstance, just a guy using his vast knowledge to find a way while an entire planet works nonstop to get him off Mars. This is such an excellent adaptation of the source material as well, that what's left out is understandable and it's more for runtime than anything. But the spirit and tone of the story are very much preserved. And because of all of that, it feels so realistic that I often forget it is a sci-fi film. Then it was one of those nights of just scrolling and looking for something and came up on Prime and found the M. Night Shyamalan movie Old, which is one of his more recent ones that I had purposely missed. Old, as in I feel old remembering when I actually looked forward to M. Night's movies. In this, 3 families staying at a fancy resort are given exclusive access to a private beach on the other side of the island. Soon they realize the beach has a secret. It causes the visitors to age rapidly, as in years pass in an hour, and there is no chance of escape. Once everything is revealed by the end, I admit I liked the concept of the film overall. Unfortunately, it is bogged down with laughably bad dialogue, painfully over-the-top acting, and just plain dumb scenarios. I think the most offensive was the acting because it had a good cast, most of whom I've seen in many other projects. So I don't know what was happening here or if the dialogue and plot were just so awful no one could have made this work. So it was a decent concept, just it was very poorly executed in every way possible. And then to get the girls out of the house, and because they enjoyed the first one and my youngest enjoyed the books, we went and saw The Bad Guys 2 in the theater. I'll keep this short and sweet because there's not a lot for me to say. It's a pretty harmless kids film. In the first one, a gang of anthropomorphic animals typically feared by humans, wolf, snake, shark, spider, piranha, embraced their bad guy status and performed major heists. But of course they turn good by the end. Unfortunately, they find the good life far less profitable in the sequel and are tempted back to the life of crime for one last big heist. It has a great voice cast, and there are some references for older audience members without being too cheeky, but I have to be honest, I don't remember the first film very well, though I think it was relatively simple and all about the heists. However, in the sequel, it becomes so over the top, they end up in outer space. And this progression reminds me of the Fast and Furious franchise, but instead of taking 8 sequels to get really silly, it only took 1, which is fine because it is an animated kids film, but if they keep going, I have no idea how far they'll take it. Plus, it's only been a couple of weeks and I don't remember this one that well either. With the knowledge that Thunderbolts would be coming to streaming soon, and it is one I wanted to see, I decided to catch up with the most recent MCU films that I had missed or ignored or skipped or forgotten about completely. So I'm going to kind of talk about these together-ish, I guess, and that would be Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, The Marvels, and Captain America: Brave New World. Firstly, Ant-Man never stood a chance. I like Paul Rudd, and I like the character of Scott Lang, Ant-Man, but I do not like his standalone films. I like him when he's with the other Avengers, but not him in his own story. I have the exact same feelings about Doctor Strange as well. So I knew going in I was going to find this pretty dumb, and I did. This time, Scott and family are all pulled into the quantum realm, but on an even deeper level than before. I think, as I'm not 100% sure exactly how all this worked. Anyway, there's a whole alien world unto itself, and they have to find a way back home, plus fight Kang the Conqueror, who was first introduced in the Loki show. I didn't enjoy a second of this movie, finding both the plot and humor to be pretty dumb. Next was The Marvels, which found Carol Danvers, Kamala Khan, and Monica Rambeau accidentally swapping places whenever they used their powers because of an alien woman finding a matching bangle to Miss Marvel's power source? I think the problem is I never watched Miss Marvel, so I don't really understand what happened in this. I get the basic gist, but there's a lot of stuff that I was missing because I gave up on the Disney Plus shows a long time ago. And I feel like that's my biggest problem with the MCU at this point. During the Infinity Saga, the only related show was S.H.I.E.L.D., plot points of which led into the opening of the Age of Ultron movie. However, it was quickly resolved, and we didn't really need to know what happened on S.H.I.E.L.D. to enjoy the second Avengers film. Now there's something like 14 shows on Disney Plus, some with multiple seasons, that feed into the multiverse saga, and it's just too much to ask casual viewers to commit that kind of time, assuming most can even have a streaming subscription in the first place. Actually, it's just downright rude. I still give this movie a little more credit because the chemistry between these three women was really good, but that's the only thing that saved it for me, and I'm not sure I'll remember much about it in a month. And so Captain America Brave New World fell flat too. I had watched the Falcon and Winter Soldier series and had the backstory, but my biggest problem with this movie was using Ross as such an important character when William Hurt passed away after playing him in 5 MCU films. It's not like replacing Terrence Howard with Don Cheadle after one appearance, and it's nothing to do with Harrison Ford, because I would never, but I feel like they could have used another villain in story while letting this character go. Maybe it could have been Ross's brother, I don't know, but it just felt wrong. Also, the hype in advertising the Red Hulk was overblown, considering how far into the film he shows up and barely has any screen time. At least they finally acknowledged the celestial being coming out of the ocean from the Eternals, another movie I hated, and now we have adamantium in the MCU. Otherwise, these are more overall disappointing films since the Infinity Saga wrapped. Thankfully, the Thunderbolts also hit streaming this month, but more on that later. And then once 28 Years Later was available for at-home rental, I jumped on it, paid too much. I forgot to mention that there is a minor spoiler in my review, but I felt like I needed to bring it up to talk about all my feelings. If you want to know absolutely nothing about this movie, please skip to the timestamp on the screen now. Okay, tuck in. This is a lot because my emotions were an absolute roller coaster during this movie. Almost 3 decades after the Rage infection outbreak, the British Isles are under quarantine while the rest of the world couldn't care less and just keeps on living life. A small civilization has thrived on an island protected by a causeway that floods with the tide. But if anyone gets stranded on the mainland during an excursion, they are on their own for survival with no help of rescue. So the first half of the film centers on 12-year-old Spike making his first trip to the mainland with his father, Jamie, to hunt and learn more about the infected that still roam there. The minor spoiler is that they become stranded overnight, but do make it back to their island village the next day. And I gave a spoiler warning because this plot point is half the film. While stranded overnight, Spike sees a fire and is told it's a survivor who was once a doctor before the outbreak, but has since gone completely crazy. With his mother dying of an unknown illness, Spike decides to take her to the mainland to find the doctor for medical help. I say all of this because Spike's trips to the mainland with each parent are so different from one another that it almost feels like 2 different films. When it's father and son, something really felt like a video game, as every arrow-piercing infected caused odd slow-mo shots with blood splatter, as the hypnotic Kipling poem from the trailer is played over it. At first, I just was not into the style and direction that Boyle chose. However, once Spike was with his mother, Isla, on the mainland, then everything began to feel more in sync with the first film, and it really was about the characters and their relationships against the backdrop of the apocalypse instead of dealing with the apocalypse itself. And to me, it felt like a stylistic choice to show how Spike was being pulled between the alpha male hero training from his father, whom he does come to realize is not such a great guy, and a sensitive kid who just wants to find his beloved mother some help. This is when I actually connected with the film and really started liking it. Then the final 5 minutes undid all of it. Although there were hints sprinkled throughout of what was to come, the abrupt tonal shift ruined it for me. I know it's setting up for a planned trilogy, And culturally speaking, I did not understand the context of what I was watching. However, it was so bizarre and out of left field that I'm still mad about it. The only way I'd finish this trilogy at this point is if Cillian Murphy reprises his role in a huge way. Like, he has to be the star of the next two films. Then I would relent and rewatch this, but if not, I'm done. And 28 Days Later is where it ends for me. Oh, and then I decided on a little self-torture. You know, sometimes curiosity really does get the best of us. And I was scrolling, looking for something to watch, and I came across Winnie-the-Pooh, Blood and Honey, a horror film. Yeah. I'm sorry to myself. After abandoning his friends in the 100-acre wood for medical school, Christopher Robin returns to find Winnie-the-Pooh and Piglet have gone completely feral. They kill Christopher Robin's wife and abduct him before they begin stalking a group of young women renting a nearby Airbnb for the weekend. If you're wondering about copyright laws like I was, it turns out that the original A.A. Milne characters entered the public domain in 2022, and this movie came out immediately afterwards, making it a perfect example of just because you can does not mean you should. Of course, the title grabs your attention, but it all turns out to be a very bland slasher flick where the two killers wear very crappy rubber masks, kind of resembling a bear and a pig. The friend group of 5 women are hardly distinguishable from one another, and random plot points are just dropped left and right. So, in my opinion, if somebody has the nerve to take these beloved characters and make them monsters, they should at least be creative about it. So in the same vein as the characters in Blood and Honey having absolutely nothing to do with their original characters, I also watched the 1940 version of Pride and Prejudice. Again, is it really from the same source material? First of all, spoiler warning, but it's a really, really old story, so it's kind of your own fault. But I'm not going to go over the well-known plot of the Bennett sisters. I'll just jump right into hating this adaptation. Small things, like production issues, I can almost forgive considering the time period. For example, the studio did not want a big costume budget on a film they were unsure would do well at the box office. So they recycled costumes from Gone with the Wind and made new ones in the same style for the main characters. So that means characters from one of the most famous Regency-era novels of all time were wearing American Civil War-era costumes. I said I can almost forgive it. What I can't consider forgiving are the character changes. I'll just skip to the most egregious flaw. Lady Catherine helps Darcy secure Lizzie's affections in the end. There are no words for just how wrong this feels. But the main problem with the film is how rushed everything is. They skip Pemberley altogether, straight to jail. As if that weren't bad enough, the ending has Lydia and Wickham's homecoming, Lady Catherine's visit, with her being the one to inform Lizzie of Darcy's aid, and Darcy and Bingley both proposing all in one afternoon at the Bennet home. I really do understand the need to make changes, but what the hell was this? Really, the most interesting thing about this adaptation is finding out that Aldous Huxley, yes, the author of Brave New World, wrote the screenplay. And as much as I give him credit for opening my mind at 13 years old when reading my first dystopian fiction novel, I cannot give him a pass for this. So then we decided it was time to show our girls the Dark Knight trilogy, our favorite version of Batman, and there's nowhere else to begin but at the beginning with Batman Begins. Yeah, I didn't think that through. Not much to say here. I love this movie, and it's a great start to the trilogy. A couple of cheesy one-liners do make me roll my eyes from time to time, but if that's the worst crime it commits, I'll take it. So again, random scrolling, not sure what to watch. And then I came across another horror movie, but one from the 80s that is now like an absolute cult classic. And I'd seen parts of it, but I'd never watched it all the way through until now. And that would be Killer Klowns from Outer Space. Yes, it's silly and it's bad, but in such a fun way. I don't even have to give you a plot because the title literally says it all. I remember catching various scenes of this on cable as a kid, but never sat down to watch it in its entirety until now. And even though it's far from anyone being able to call it good, I can definitely see how it's found a cult following. Think of The Room if you've seen that. This is colorful and goofy and delivers exactly what it promises. And this is how you do a silly concept horror film. Makers of Winnie-the-Pooh, Blood and Honey, take notes. And then finally, which is ridiculous to say because I think it really just came out in April. Thunderbolts hit Disney Plus on streaming, and I was finally able to watch it. A mismatched cast of antiheroes must band together to do what's right. I've seen it a million times before, and I'm an absolute sucker for it every single time. I will never get over the person who was always out for themselves turning into the hero, even if it's at the last minute. I mean, as long as it's written well, obviously. And I feel like Thunderbolts is. Also, it doesn't rely too heavily on a Disney Plus series, like I complained earlier. Although John Walker's backstory is rooted in Falcon and Winter Soldier, this film catches us up on who he is and what he's done pretty quickly. Everyone else has made an appearance in an MCU film before, or multiple if you're Bucky Barnes. But beyond being a scrappy ragtag team of morally gray characters, Thunderbolts also has a wonderful villain. It's not some cookie-cutter baddie who wants a power source or world domination or whatever is picked out of a hat this week. It's not even good old revenge. Nope, in the end, it's the internal struggle of depression, loneliness, and self-loathing personified. And damn, is it dark, literally and figuratively. But that's why it's so great. It's not easily conquered and forgotten like most villains of the week. It will continue to be a struggle for all, whether they call themselves the New Avengers or not. So another movie, I really didn't think I'd ever seen this, but Letterboxd says I have. I logged it at some point. I have no idea when. But I get a lot of advertisements for Broadway stuff on my Facebook, even though I do not live anywhere near Broadway. But apparently Death Becomes Her has become a really big deal, the stage version. So I watched the early 90s film version. Two old frenemies go to extreme lengths to stay eternally youthful with their clueless plastic surgeon boy toy caught in the middle. Unfortunately, through their rivalry, they both end up undead. I get a lot of Broadway ads on my Bookface feed for some reason, and the stage adaptation has been quite the sensation this year. So I thought maybe I'd check out the film version for fun. This is one of those that I thought I had a general knowledge about, but had never actually watched, much like Good Will Hunting from earlier. However, after finishing it, I went to log it on my Letterboxd account only to discover I already had at some point. See, the thing is, I used to watch a ton of movies, like an insane amount in the late 2000s and early 2010s when I had a movie blog and podcast. So I guess I did watch it at some point, but had completely forgotten about it. Also, I sometimes get it confused with She-Devil because Meryl Streep was after everybody's husbands back in the day, but her vastly diverse resume always boggles my mind. All that being said, this is just a silly fun movie with a great cast of Streep, Goldie Hawn, Bruce Willis, and Isabella Rossellini. Clearly it doesn't have much staying power if I didn't remember seeing it before, but it's a fun watch while it's on. And then another Saturday family film movie night rolled around, so we continued on the girls' education and watched The Dark Knight. I have nothing of major significance to say. It is my favorite superhero film. I do think it's perfect, and I was really happy to finally share it with my kids. Although my 12-year-old's love for the Joker was a bit concerning. But no regrets. Not yet, anyway. Here's our square for August to be added to the pile, which I need to start putting together at some point, but I just haven't gotten around to it. A lot of bad stuff. A lot of stuff I knew would be bad and watched it anyway. Hello, Winnie-the-Pooh. Some very disappointing stuff. 28 years later, what you doing? You're killing me. I could go on and on about that one. I feel like it's been a really long time since I had a 3 new to me watch. And I was happy to at least have one again because it felt like the only really great stuff that I loved were rewatches, which is fine. Like, that's the point. But it was nice to watch a new to me movie that I really, really deeply enjoyed. That is it for my August movie wrap up. If you are new here, hello. I have gotten like 150 new subscribers this week, which is a lot for such a small channel. So I appreciate you being here. I appreciate all of the people who've been here for a while. I just appreciate you all. And I hope you continue to check in with me and see what stupid things I am making from week to week. But that is all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all the YouTube things, and I will see you in the next one.